Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. My name is Suseno Yudho Purnomo. I'm from class 4B and with the end of the name of 45. So, in this video, I am going to give a YouTube book promotion report for the lecture of extensive reading in the English Education Department of UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta. So, the book that I'm going to present to you or maybe promote to you is called Task-Based Language Teaching. The author of this book, his name is David Nunan. Who is David Nunan? So, what we are going to talk about first before the book. So, basically, David Nunan is an Australian linguist who has focused on the teaching of English, and his ELT textbook series, Go For It, is the largest selling textbook series in the world with the sales of exceeding 1 billion copies. So, some of you might think that that information is kind of like worthless, or you may think that it's not really necessary. But for me, I will tell you guys that before reading a book, it's good for you to know who the author is. So by then you will understand about the things that he write inside of the book, or more of it if it is a novel, or maybe even a textbook or some biography. It is quite uh, good for you to know the author first before you read the book. So moving on to the book. This book was published at 1st November 2004 by the Cambridge University Press. The genre of this book is reference, and this book has moreover 228 pages. So, before moving on to the book, we all must know that right now, in the world, the field of task-based language teaching has developed considerably since the publication of Designing Tasks for the Communicative Classroom. It was said by Nunan once in 1989. So, a book which helped to see the research agenda in teaching methodology for the following decade. While designing task underpins this new title, the material has been truly updated and includes four completely new chapters. Task-based language teaching offers a comprehensive and up-to-date appraisal of the field. Now, we can move on to the main course, and that is the book. The book called Task-Based Language Teaching, a comprehensive approach. So, this book, Task-Based Language Teaching, is a groundbreaking approach that has revolutionized the field of language teaching. Developed by David Nunan, this method emphasized the importance of engaging learners' natural abilities for acquiring language in incidentally through the performance of tasks that draw the learner's attention to form. In this book, Nunan provides a comprehensive and accessible introduction to TBLT, covering its history, principles, and even practical applications. Now, moving on to the chapters. This book in total have 8 chapters. The first chapter is called What is Task-Based Language Teaching? By the name, we already know that this chapter of the book provides an overview of TBLT, its history, its importance in second language acquisition research. This chapter discusses how tasks are used to elicit language production, interaction, negotiation of meaning, processing of input, and focus on form to foster second language acquisition. Moving on to the second chapter, called A Framework for Task-Based Language Teaching. This chapter explores the rationale behind task-based learning, defining and giving example of tasks and their outcomes. It explains the stage of a typical task cycle, which focus on using language to exchange meanings, and the importance of subsequent study of language forms in the context of the text. Moving on to the third chapter called Task Components. In this chapter, the book discusses the components of task, including goals, input, procedure, task types, teachers and learner roles, and settings. It highlights the importance of considering these components when designing a task to achieve specific learning outcomes. Moving on to the fourth chapter. In this chapter is called an empirical basis for task-based language teaching. So, this chapter of the book examines early psycholinguistic models and the importance of interaction, output, and the negotiation of meaning in task-based teaching. This chapter discusses the task difficulty and its implication for language learners, which really helps a lot for us teachers to know how difficult the task is and what are the implications of those tasks for language learning. Moving on to the next chapter, and it is chapter 5. It is called Focus on Form in Task-Based Language Teaching. So, in this chapter of the book, the author delves into the theoretical and empirical issues surrounding form-focused instruction in task-based language teaching. This chapter discusses form-focused versus unfocused tasks, cons- consciousness-raising tasks, and the place of a focus on form in a instructional sequence. Moving on to the sixth chapter, grading, sequencing, and integrating tasks. Just by the name of the chapter, we will already know what this chapter is going to talk about. In this chapter of the book, the author focuses on grading input, learners factors, procedural factors, task continuity within task sequencing, and different types of instruction, like topic-based or maybe theme-based instruction, content-based instruction, and project-based instruction. So, moving on to the seventh chapter. This chapter is called Assessing Task-Based Language Teaching. By the name of the chapter, we will know that this chapter is going to talk about assessment, which is a very big part of being a teacher because you must assess your students. In this chapter, the author discusses the key concept in assessment, the purposes of assessment, the self-assessment, the technique for collecting assessment data, and criteria for assessing learner performance would help that could help us teachers and definitely the learners to also know about why they get those assessment and why the teacher have to give them assessment. So assessment has a really deep meaning into it, but right now we are going to focus on this book and moving on to the last chapter, and that is chapter 8. The eighth chapter, or the last chapter, is called Task and Teachers Development. So, in this last chapter, the author explores the role of the teacher in task-based language teaching, including the self-directed teacher, an in-service workshop, evaluating tasks, creating tasks, and the role of teachers' development in implementing task-based language teaching. So, by reading all those chapters and knowing what's inside of this book, we all know that this book is a book which talks about the task-based approach to language technique methodology, in which David Nunan has introduced the principle of this approach and the shift from communicative language teaching to this method by tackling through the notion of task, its meaning and its components, and moving to the ways of grading and sequencing the task. In addition to how to assess and evaluate tasks, It is very useful and helpful for teachers all over the world, as this is the new pedagogy to be adapted to meet the needs of different groups of learners. It raises teachers' awareness about the usefulness of tasks in the classroom and the integration of real-life tasks into teaching practice to achieve both text and task authenticity, all of which helps the learners to develop the communicative strategy and socio-linguistic competence. In conclusion of this video, we know that task-based language teaching offers a comprehensive and up-to-date appraisal of the field. It is a valuable resource for both practicing teachers and those in preparations, providing practical guidance on how to design and implement effective task-based lessons. By adopting this approach, teacher can enhance learners' communicative strategy and social linguistic competencies, leading to more authentic and engaging language learning experience. So, this book is very recommended to you teachers or students who want to know about the system of language teaching. Well, I guess that's all I can say to you. Hope you all enjoy. Thank you very much, and assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.